Greetings and salutations, my lovely little bitelings. Today I'll be going over, I guess a more touchy subject for some of you than we normally do in our videos, which is whether or not Aion is still an MMORPG worth playing and investing time into as it is currently. Now this will be of course based around my own opinion and that of people I know's experience with Aion, and based around what's generally said regarding Aion. The reason I am doing this video is because there are a large number of people interested in Aion, the premise at least, however they're just unsure. And to be honest, there's a lot of conflicting information all around regarding Aion, and I hope by making this I'll be able to shed some light regarding the good parts of Aion, the bad side, the annoying, and the in-between, so you can make an informed opinion on whether or not you would like to play it in its current state. However, before I get into this video, I would like to say if you enjoy it, don't forget to like or leave a comment, so we know you guys are enjoying these new types, or I guess varied types of content that we're currently providing for you, which is gameplay videos, news videos, worth playing videos, top videos, and the like. Okay, now that's out the way, let's talk about Aion. Aion is a hugely successful, semi-open world fantasy MMORPG. It was originally released in November of 2008, and is still popular to this day. Granted, its player base and popularity has dropped since its initial launch. It's to be expected, as Aion's features, graphics, and general gameplay becomes more and more dated as more time goes by. But this is by no means a negative on Aion's part, it's just merely a natural part of becoming an older MMORPG. They just tend to feel older. Aion is set in the world of Atreia, where two factions, or I guess you could call them races in this case, are at war with each other. These races are Asmodeans and the Ilios. These two races being at war is a fundamental part of Aion as a whole. Besides from just giving you the ability to PvP the other race in the open world, Aion has, at least at its base, or core, is a very story-driven MMORPG, as it's solely around the Asmodeans and Ilios' struggle against each other and the struggles against their shared enemies. However, that being said, the stories, while requiring different things from you, as the quests will be different, areas and regions will differ and whatnot, the general outcome of said story or special story events that take place are the same, just from the Ilios' perspective or from the Asmodeans' perspective. General cutscenes from normal quests will differ from Asmodean to Ilios though, as they are from different NPCs and regions. It wouldn't make sense if they had the same. Alright, so before we get into anything serious regarding Aion, let's go over the character creator and customization you can do with it. While there are some people who play MMORPGs who don't actually care about their character looks or generally skip over the customization of their character, I feel as though there are a lot more players that generally enjoy being able to create a character that's truly unique to them. And having a good creator really gives you the ability to do this. Granted, not all character creators are equal in depth, as a lot of MMOs have a small selection of hairstyles, faces, and not really any sliders to generally edit your character. So where exactly does Aion's character creator stand? Well, it is still, to this day, generally considered to have one of the best character creators found in an MMORPG. That's with it being up against other MMOs, such as Black Desert Online's character creator, or even Blade & Soul's character creator. In Aion, you're not only given sliders to customize your character's face extensively, but you're also given the freedom to edit your character's body just as extensively. I mean, there's body girth, height, general proportions, head size, leg length, breast and butt sliders. Basically, any and every part of your body can, in essence, be edited. Being able to edit your character's face and body isn't the only thing you can do, however, as there is a massive selection of hairstyles, eye patterns, face decorations, face types, and tattoos, whilst giving you the ability to actually color your skin, hair, and eyes to pretty much any color you want. Although there is a general limit to the coloring of your skin, depending on what race you choose. So we're talking Ilios characters have more of a lighter skin tone range, where Asmodean characters have a more darker skin range, due to lore reasons. In a patch prior, there was more of a physical difference between the two races, however. They have since removed the differences from Asmodeans, like their claws and their clawed feet that protruded through their shoes. The mains, however, are still within the game as an option you can choose to either keep or take off. This is generally the character customization found within Aion. It's very detailed, and if you actually take the time and put in the effort, you can truly create any character you imagine. Combat in general, whether we're talking MMORPGs or not, is always very important. No one wants to play a combat that's stiff or boring. However, everyone has their own definition of what makes combat good, as some people enjoy tab target combat because they find action combat is too fast paced or they find it hard aiming skills correctly, whereas other people find tab target combat boring, plain, and generally stiff, and in essence can't properly get invested into an MMORPG without action combat. So then, what is Aion's combat? Well, it uses tab targeting. However, the combat is by no means slow, at least regarding higher levels. If we're talking early levels with minimum skills, it can be very slow and very tedious, and that's an honest opinion. However, this could be said for most early game combat in most MMORPGs. So it's not exactly exclusive to Aion in this regard. The classes that suffer mostly early on in regards to combat are casters, as you cannot move while casting and the casts of your skills can be slow. Once again, this is early game combat, but it is still pertinent information as there's really no point in having fantastic later game combat when you've got to sit through hours and hours of slow or stiff combat. Do note, I'm not saying Aion's is necessarily like this, I'm just explaining why I'm talking about early game combat right now. Now, the combat in Aion gets a lot more interesting as you progress enough through your levels, as you'll have so many skills to use and so many skills chained to said skills that you'll have to micromanage a lot during fights if you want to actually use your class correctly. As I pointed out, when you use skills, chain skills will pop up after you've successfully used the skill, sometimes with 3 to 4 differing chain skill options, with you being required to pick which one you want to use. And said chain skills may have another skill chained to it as well, allowing you to consistently use skills in succession. I will give you a basic example of what I mean. So for instance, it works like this. I use a skill called Devastating Blow. Once I've used this skill, I can choose to use either Smack, Stab, or Jab. Smack can potentially stun my foe. Stab is another attacking skill, and Jab is a bleed, so a dot. So you see, this adds another layer to the combat, as you'll need to plan your skills and use chains effectively. Now for instance, after I use Devastating Blow, I choose to use the follow-up skill Smack. I stun my foe and another chain skill pops up, which also has 2 options. For instance, Knockdown, which deals a good amount of damage and perhaps slows my foe. Or Stab, just like from the previous chain where I chose to not use it and instead chose Smack, I can choose to use it this time and bleed my target. Now I hope this sufficiently explains the intricacy of the skill chains found within Aion, so whilst it is tab target, it still has a lot of depth to it, and it's not actually that slow, as you'll find yourself spamming through skills. This combat becomes a lot more complicated in PvP, as you will not only just have to manage your skill chains, but also movement, or of course flying, as there is also aerial combat in Aion, managing your self buffs, and what the enemy is doing, and how to counter his class, or how to combat the cooldowns he's used. Combat and PvP in Aion is interesting and fun, even if it starts off kind of slow. There's an abundance of PvE related content found within Aion, from while you're leveling up to max level, as you've got your typical quests and story related content with huge quest chains that lead towards solo challenges at times, some of which can be quite frustrating at times. There's also a large selection of content for most levels. These dungeons start around level 18. Granted, the first one is a solo dungeon, which is Haramel. Then you've got Nochsana Training Camp, which is for level 25, Ethereal Genetics Lab, Azoturan Fortress, and of course Chromede's Trial. These are all instances or dungeons for the level 30 to 40 level ranges. Although in regards to Chromede's Trial, it's also a solo instance. And I could continue to name said instances or dungeons all the way to 65, however, I feel like you guys get what I'm saying. There's a lot of instances to partake in. Now, dungeons aren't the only thing you can do, as there are also, I guess, you could call them mini-games that you can queue for that functions similarly to dungeons, but they're also quite different at the same time. Now, there are dry areas in Aion's PvE related content, as you'll find yourself grinding monsters and doing boring quests to make it to the levels required to enter said dungeons. And even once you make it to said required level, you still need to form a party, as these dungeons are quite punishing. And while Aion still has a medium-sized player base, there is a drought of players in earlier areas. I won't sugarcoat it, you could potentially end up waiting for hours to enter a dungeon because of this, where the only thing you can do while waiting is to complete tedious and boring quests or grind monsters. Now, while there's a lot of PvE related content in Aion, Aion is in essence, at its core, a PvP game, with the game having complete open world PvP, where rifts will appear, allowing you to travel into the Ilios' continents if you're an Asmodean, or the Asmodean continents if you're an Ilios player. Aion, at its peak, whenever a portal opened up, tons of players would pour out of it, creating some serious havoc and some epic PvP fun. Nowadays, however, you'll only find small groups of people actually coming through these portals, as there aren't enough higher leveled players in said regions to warrant traveling through. And, well, it's just generally easier to PvP in the Abyss. The main players that still use these portals into enemy areas are generally griefers, that go around killing lower leveled players for fun. These players are for the most part taken care of by other higher leveled devas that are nice enough to come and help you, as I found that Aion's community is quite friendly in fact. However, there are times when this is not the case and griefers are left to run rampant for hours, which can really ruin your day. Not that I'm saying this is a frequent occurring thing, just that it happens from time to time. So into the Abyss. The Abyss is a large area designed for large-scale PvP and PvP-related content, and it still has the largest population of players inside, and is generally the go-to place for PvP in Aion. Even today, you'll see devas amassing in groups ready to fight the other race. The Abyss is the only place where you can fly without restrictions, excluding actual flight time of course. However, this becomes less of an issue as you reach higher levels, as there are skills that refresh your flight time, potions, and etc. Flying while PvPing is something that'll happen in the Abyss, as there isn't a whole lot of flat ground in there. Therefore, PvPing can get a lot more difficult for close-range characters, or even just straight up annoying for you, as you'll have to close the distance whilst flying. There are also a varied number of tasks to complete while you're in the Abyss that aren't directly connected to killing the other race. However, you should always be on your guard whenever traveling there, as most people who tend to PvP in the Abyss do not travel alone, and can at times become a gank fest. Although that is to be expected when it's a PvP area. So generally, PvP in Aion isn't dead, it's just generally localized to the Abyss. However, you will still find people fighting in earlier zones every now and again. It's just not as frequent as it once was. Endgame for Aion has a mix between PvE and PvP content, with the main goal or focus behind said PvP and PvE content being the bettering of your gear, even though Aion isn't an easy MMORPG by any means. Now, the process of getting better gear is where you might say the real struggle begins. Generally speaking, Aion's leveling can be slow, but for most people, getting to level 65 is still a fun experience. However, after 65, this is where a lot of complaints come from regarding Aion, as at this point you're left to farm coins that can be used to purchase gear, farm the same instances over and over to gather more XP, or generally fighting against much more geared players than yourself and getting your ass beat. In Aion, you'll find a lot of people struggling to make it past 65, as the required XP in order to level up is quite high, and the general difficulty of the game is increased. Now, I'm not saying all of Aion's endgame is horrible, I'm merely pointing out how it is. Some people enjoy the grind, Some people like to work hard and enjoy having something to work towards each day. However, at the same time, some people don't like to spend hours repeating the same thing that they did yesterday. All in all, Aion's endgame can be repetitive and frustrating, but it's also rewarding, depending on whom you ask. Now, before I end the discussion of endgame content, I will bring to light that there's a common argument regarding whether or not Aion is pay to win at endgame. And to answer this, it's more like pay to go faster. Even if you spend money, it will only speed things up. It won't actually get you to the location instantly. So a player that pays may make it to the location faster than someone who puts in hard work. However, you can still make it to the same destination with hard work. So it's not technically pay to win, it's just pay to make it slightly faster, or pay to make it more casual. Aion, while not being graphically intense for nowadays standards, has a rather poor performance. Not in regards to ping per se, as I personally don't have much of an issue with ping in Aion, however its optimization is an issue. While visiting areas with a large number of players or even just roaming around, you'll encounter major FPS drops. Now this makes traveling around cities a nightmare, even for myself who has a strong computer. Imagine someone who has a potato PC, for instance, trying to traverse the city. It can be very frustrating. Now, while the FPS issue mainly plays up in cities, as a large number of players are gathered in the same spot, there are other places that also have this issue, like large-scale PvP, where there's a lot of enemy players and allied players all on the screen at the same time, and you'll need to have quick reflexes in order to stay alive or participate in what's going on. You don't want your screen to constantly be freezing up due to the FPS dropping. So while generally it's not much of a problem, there are times when it can be very annoying, and it's definitely something that should have been fixed by now. So now is where I'll be giving my genuine opinion regarding whether or not Aion is still worth playing in 2017, or whether it's worth it for a new player to invest time into it. So let's do this. If you're looking for a long-term MMORPG that is challenging and can be grindy at times, with a fun combat system, especially for tab targeting, with a medium player base of mostly friendly players, then yes, Aion is for you. However, I will say that Aion is not a casual MMORPG. If you want to achieve something in Aion, it takes effort. That goes for leveling up in Aion, as it can be quite slow at times. And this also goes for gearing up your character and perfecting your chosen class. So if you're looking for an MMORPG that you spend a little bit of time into each day, you won't progress very far in Aion. But if you want something to truly sink your time into, Aion is definitely the MMORPG for you. The game is large and it's filled with lore and story, whilst having a good PvP element, even if at times the enemies can be overpowered. Although you may feel overwhelmed after reaching endgame, but each person experiences the game differently, and therefore what others may find boring, overwhelming, or unfair, others may find challenging and rewarding. My personal opinion is that Aion is worth playing. While it has its flaws, it's definitely still a great MMORPG that I feel like more people should try out for themselves and make their own opinions. So generally, Aion isn't an MMORPG for everyone, but it's definitely worth being tried in 2017. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you found this helpful in deciding whether or not you want to try Aion out for yourself. And as always, good day, night, or afternoon, wherever it is where you are. And I will see you guys in the next video.
We fell out of love like shooting stars came crashing down, and we're building back up again now. I see your heart, see your mind, see all you hide. I won't let you go, can't let this die. When you lose yourself, I'll be right.